Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The barrel of the suppressed pistol was cold against Julian's temple before he even registered the door opening. "Give me one reason why I shouldn't paint this hallway with your brains," a voice growled, low and vibrating with a terrifying, predatory timbre that made the fine hairs on Julian's neck stand on end. Julian froze, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird, the cheap cardboard of the pizza box crushing under his white-knuckled grip. He was 22, drowning in student debt, and wearing a ridiculous orange polo shirt that smelled like grease and regret. This was not how he was supposed to die. He stared straight ahead, his eyes locked on the silk lapel of the man who held his life in a gloved hand, and his mouth moved before his brain could catch up with the sheer terror of the situation. Because it's a meat lover's delight with extra cheese. Julian squeaked, his voice cracking. "And it's already paid for?" The gun didn't waver. The silence that stretched in the opulent, dimly lit hallway of the exclusive Obsidian Tower penthouse was heavy enough to crush lungs. Julian squeezed his eyes shut, waiting for the bang, waiting for the end. But the bang never came. Instead, the gun lowered slowly. "You're the delivery boy," the voice said, stripping the threat away but leaving the ice. "You aren't the assassin." Julian opened one eye. The man standing before him was a titan, broad-shouldered, towering at over 6'4", wearing a charcoal vest over a white dress shirt that strained against muscles honed for violence. His hair was midnight dark, sweeping over sharp, aristocratic features, but his eyes were red-rimmed, puffy, and his cheeks were wet. Julian blinked. I just followed the service elevator instructions. The key was in the panel. I didn't mean to." "Get inside," the man ordered, grabbing Julian by the collar of his uniform and hauling him over the threshold. "Before the sensors trip and the perimeter security turns you into Swiss cheese." Julian stumbled into the apartment, the heavy steel door sealing shut behind him with a vacuum-like hiss. The penthouse was a sprawling cavern of modern Gothic luxury, black marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the rain-slicked city skyline, and furniture that cost more than Julian's entire existence. But what caught Julian's attention wasn't the luxury. It was the massive, wall-sized television screen dominating the living area. On it, a woman in a Victorian dress was running through the rain, screaming a name, while a violin score swelled to a tragic crescendo. Tissue boxes were scattered everywhere. Julian looked at the screen, then back at the terrified-inducing alpha male who was currently holstering a firearm that looked very illegal. The realization hit him like a slap. "Wait," Julian whispered, the adrenaline making him bold. "Were you watching the Duchess of Sorrows?" The man froze. The air in the room shifted instantly, the temperature dropping 10 degrees. The alpha turned slowly, his gaze lethal. This was Lucien Vane. Julian recognized him now. The tabloids called him the Viper of the East, the head of the Vane Syndicate, a man rumored to have dismantled a rival cartel with his bare hands because they insulted his suit. And Lucien Vane had been crying. "You saw nothing," Lucien said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. He stepped closer, the scent of expensive sandalwood, gunpowder, and distressed alpha pheromones rolling off him in waves. It was intoxicating and terrifying. "I saw nothing," Julian repeated quickly, hugging the pizza box to his chest like a shield. "Absolutely nothing. Just, you have good taste?" The ending where she dies of consumption usually gets me too. Lucien paused. He tilted his head, studying Julian with the intensity of a wolf inspecting a particularly confused rabbit. "You know this film? It's a classic," Julian said, his survival instinct warring with his film major nerdiness. "Though, honestly, the director's cut is better. He doesn't die in the duel in that version." Lucien's eyes widened slightly. A flicker of genuine shock broke through the stony mask of the mafia don. "There is a version where he lives?" "Yeah. It's rare, though." Lucien stared at him for a long, agonizing minute. He looked at the pizza box. He looked at the tear-stained tissues on his coffee table. Then, he looked at Julian, a small, messy-haired Omega with oversized glasses and a terrified scent of vanilla and rain. "Sit," Lucien commanded, pointing to the velvet sofa. "Sir, I really need to get back to my shift," My manager is a demon and I said sit. Lucian pulled a thick wad of cash from his pocket, more money than Julian made in 3 months, and slammed it onto the marble counter. You are done with your shift. You are going to sit down. We are going to eat this pizza, and you are going to tell me where to find this director's cut. And if you tell a single soul what you saw here tonight, I will find you. Julian looked at the cash. He looked at the gun on the table. He looked at the lonely, terrifying man who just wanted a happy ending. Okay, Julian breathed. Okay, that was how it started. It should have been a one-time extortion, a bizarre anecdote Julian would never be able to tell anyone. But life, much like the melodramas Lucian Vane was addicted to, rarely followed a simple script. 3 weeks later, Julian found himself buzzing the private intercom of the penthouse again. He wasn't wearing his uniform this time. He was wearing a soft, oversized sweater and jeans, clutching a Blu-ray case in one hand and a bag of takeout from a Thai place 3 blocks over in the other. State your business. The security voice crackled. It's Julian. I have the Pride and Prejudice 1995 adaptation. And pad Thai. The lock clicked open instantly. The lift ride up was smooth, but Julian's stomach was churning. He told himself he was doing this for the money. Lucian paid him an advisory fee that had already wiped out half his credit card debt. But deep down, Julian knew it was something else. When the doors opened, Lucian was waiting. He had discarded the suit jacket, his sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and inked with dangerous, geometric tattoos. He looked tired. The circles under his eyes spoke of sleepless nights and the heavy burden of running a criminal empire. But when he saw Julian, his shoulders dropped an inch. The tension that permanently coiled around him like a snake loosened. You're late, Lucian grunted, turning to walk toward the living area. Traffic was murder, Julian quipped, toeing off his sneakers. Metaphorically speaking. Unlike your Tuesday, I assume. It was a risky joke. Lucian stopped, glancing back over his shoulder. A corner of his mouth twitched upward. Tuesday was efficient. No murder required. Just aggressive negotiations. They settled into their routine. It was a surreal domesticity that defied all logic. Lucian Vane, the silencer, sat on one end of the massive sofa, while Julian, a broke college student, curled up on the other. Between them lay a demilitarized zone of takeout containers. As the movie played, Colin Firth diving into the lake, Julian watched Lucian out of the corner of his eye. The alpha was entranced. His guard was completely down. It was in these moments that Julian saw the man beneath the monster. He saw the loneliness that etched lines around Lucian's mouth. Why this? Julian asked softly during a quiet scene. Lucian didn't look away from the screen. Why what? This? Julian gestured to the room, the movie. You have everything. Money, power, fear. You could have anyone you want. Why sit in the dark watching people fall in love? Lucian picked up his glass of whiskey, the amber liquid swirling. He remained silent for so long Julian thought he had overstepped, that he was about to be thrown out or shot. In my world, Lucian finally said, his voice rough like gravel grinding against steel, emotion is a liability. Love is a weakness. It is a leverage point for enemies to exploit. If I love something, it dies. Or it is used to kill me. He took a drink, his eyes dark. Here, in the dark, I can borrow their feelings. I can feel the grief, the joy, the heartbreak, without the blood. It is safe. Julian felt a pang in his chest, so sharp it stole his breath. He looked at this powerful, terrifying man and saw a prisoner. A king trapped in his own castle, starving for a touch he dared not ask for. Without thinking, Julian shifted closer. The distance between them on the couch shrank. That sounds incredibly lonely, Lucian. Lucian turned his head. Their faces were inches apart. Julian could see the flecks of gold in Lucian's dark irises. He could smell the rich, dark scent of the alpha, leather, rain, and a deep, underlying sorrow. It is necessary, Lucian murmured. His gaze dropped to Julian's lips, then snapped back up, panic flickering in his eyes. He pulled back, putting space between them. Watch the movie, Julian. The rejection stung, but Julian understood. He retreated to his corner, but the air between them had changed. It was charged now, heavy with unspoken things. The weeks turned into months. The advisory sessions became twice a week, then 3 times. Julian stopped being just the movie guy. He became the one who listened when Lucian ranted about the incompetence of his lieutenants. He became the one who made tea when Lucian had a migraine. And Lucian changed. He became protective. He started walking Julian down to the lobby personally. He demanded Julian text him when he got home. The Viper was softening, shedding his skin, revealing a raw vulnerability that terrified Julian as much as it drew him in. The turning point came on a stormy November night. Julian arrived at the penthouse, soaked to the bone. He had forgotten his umbrella, and his bus had broken down. He was shivering, his teeth chattering as the elevator doors opened. Lucian was there instantly. He didn't say a word. He grabbed a cashmere throw from the back of the sofa and wrapped it around Julian, pulling him into the warmth of the living room. "You're freezing," Lucian growled, his hands lingering on Julian's shoulders. His palms were hot, searing through the wet fabric of Julian's shirt. "Why didn't you call my driver? I gave you the number." "I didn't want to bother you," Julian stammered, overwhelmed by the Alpha's proximity. "You are never a bother," Lucian said, the intensity of his voice stopping Julian cold. Lucian began to rub Julian's arms, trying to generate heat. The friction, the scent, the closeness, it was too much. Julian looked up, water dripping from his hair onto his nose. "Lucian," he whispered. Lucian froze. He looked down at Julian, his expression tortured. "Don't," he warned, his voice straining. "Julian, don't look at me like that." "Like what?" "Like you want to be destroyed." Lucian's hands tightened on the blanket. "I am not a good man, Jules. I am rotting from the inside out. I will chew you up." "I don't believe that," Julian said, stepping closer, invading the Alpha's space. "I think you're just afraid that the movie might have a happy ending." Lucian let out a shuddering breath. He lowered his forehead until it rested against Julian's. "There are no happy endings for men like me." "Then let's make a sequel," Julian breathed. Lucian's restraint snapped. He groaned, a low, animalistic sound, and captured Julian's lips. The kiss wasn't gentle. It was desperate, hungry, a collision of two souls who had been orbiting each other for too long. Lucian tasted of whiskey and danger. Julian tasted of rain and hope. For a moment, the world outside, the mafia, the debts, the violence, ceased to exist. There was only the heat of the penthouse, the sound of the rain against the glass, and the overwhelming weight of the Alpha pressing Julian against the wall, claiming him. But the world outside was never far away. A piercing alarm shattered the moment. Red emergency lights bathed the apartment in a hellish glow. Lucian tore himself away, his eyes instantly shifting from lover to killer. He reached for the gun holstered under the coffee table. "Stay down," Lucian barked, shoving Julian behind the heavy marble island of the kitchen. "Don't move. Don't make a sound." "Lucian, what?" "They found us," Lucian snarled. "The Kaneshiro family. They must have tracked you." Guilt, cold and sharp, pierced Julian's gut. "Me? But I was careful." "It doesn't matter now." Lucian checked the magazine, racking the slide. "I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Julian nodded, trembling. "Yes." The front door exploded inward. The next 10 minutes were a blur of noise and terror. Men in black tactical gear stormed the penthouse. Gunfire erupted, deafening in the enclosed space. Julian curled into a ball, covering his ears, squeezing his eyes shut as glass shattered and bullets chipped the marble above his head. He heard Lucian moving, fast, lethal, a force of nature. He heard the sickening crunch of bone, the wet thud of bodies hitting the floor. The Viper was loose. Then, silence. "Clear," a voice shouted, not Lucian's. Julian gasped as rough hands grabbed him by the hair, hauling him up. A cold gun barrel pressed against his throat. A man with a scar running down his face held him hostage, using him as a shield. "Drop it, Vane," the man screamed. "Or the Omega paints the floor." Julian opened his eyes. The living room was a wreck. Bodies lay scattered. Lucian stood across the room, his white shirt stained crimson. Whether his blood or theirs, Julian couldn't tell. He held a gun aimed directly at Julian's captor, his hand rock steady. But his eyes were wide with panic. The one thing he feared had happened. His weakness had been exploited. "Let him go," Lucian said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "He is nothing. He is just a delivery boy. He's your pet," the scar-faced man spat. "We've been watching." You've gone soft, vain, playing house with a stray. Lucian's gaze locked onto Julian's. In that split second, a silent communication passed between them. Trust me. You're right, Lucian said coldly. I don't make deals for strays. Lucian lowered his gun slightly. The captor, sensing victory, grinned and relaxed his grip just a fraction to aim his own weapon at Lucian. Bang! The shot didn't come from Lucian's hand. It came from the floor. Julian, remembering the self-defense moves Lucian had idly showed him during a kung fu movie marathon, had stomped viciously on the man's instep and dropped his weight. As the man flinched, Lucian fired. The bullet struck the captor right between the eyes. He crumbled backward, releasing Julian. Julian scrambled away, hyperventilating. Lucian was there in a heartbeat, dropping his gun and falling to his knees. He grabbed Julian's face, his bloody hands trembling. Jules, look at me. Are you hurt? Did he touch you? I'm okay. Julian sobbed, clutching Lucian's shirt. I'm okay. You shot him. I had to. Lucian choked out. He pulled Julian into a crushing embrace, burying his face in Julian's neck. I told you. I told you it wasn't safe. I told you I would destroy you. You saved me, Julian argued, his voice muffled against Lucian's chest. You didn't destroy me. You saved me. Lucian pulled back, his eyes searching Julian's face for any sign of deception. He found only adoration and shock. Why? Lucian asked, his voice breaking. Why stay? Look at this. Look at what I am. Julian reached up, wiping a streak of blood from Lucian's cheek with his thumb. Because the movie isn't over yet, Lucian. And I'm tired of watching you cry alone. Lucian closed his eyes, leaning into the touch. The adrenaline began to fade, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion. I can't let you leave now, he whispered. The Kaneshiro family knows who you are. If you leave this tower, you're dead. I guess I'm moving in then, Julian said, a shaky smile forming on his lips. But we're renegotiating my fee. And I get to pick the movie tonight. Lucian let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. He kissed Julian's forehead, a gesture of reverence. Anything. You can have anything. 3 months later. The penthouse had been repaired. The marble was pristine, the glass replaced. But the atmosphere was different. It was warmer. There were 2 toothbrushes in the bathroom. There was a stack of textbooks on the coffee table next to the gun oil. Lucian sat on the sofa, his arm draped possessively around Julian's shoulders. On the screen, the credits of a rom-com were rolling. That was terrible, Lucian grumbled, though he made no move to get up. The protagonist should have just bought the bakery instead of chasing the girl to the airport. Poor financial planning. Julian laughed, resting his head on Lucian's chest. You're missing the point of romance, babe. I have the point of romance right here, Lucian murmured, pressing a kiss to the top of Julian's head. Lucian wasn't crying anymore. The tissue box on the table remained untouched. He didn't need the catharsis of fiction to feel something. He had the reality of Julian, warm, alive, and safe in his arms. The Viper had found his heart, and he would burn the world down before he let anyone take it from him again. And that is how the Viper tamed the wolf, or perhaps, how the delivery boy tamed the beast. If you enjoyed seeing Julian take control of the uncontrollable, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a lover whose past put a target on your back? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt, masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art. 2 men, BL, yaoi, man 1. Tall muscular mafia boss, sharp jawline, black hair, wearing unbuttoned white dress shirt with bloodstains, shoulder holster, tears in eyes, expression of desperate relief, holding man 2 protective embrace. Man 2. Smaller, messy brown hair, wearing oversized beige sweater, looking up lovingly, hands on man 1's chest. Background is destroyed luxury penthouse living. Room, shattered glass, city skyline at night through broken window, moody blue and orange lighting, discarded pizza box on floor, cinematic composition, emotional atmosphere, detailed eyes.